Do you get that t-shirt for Christmas?
Yes, I did. From my mum, who watches these videos. So, hi, Mum. I'm not drinking vodka today, it's just a juice box. I'm going to make you proud, Mummy. Before Bryan Cranston was breaking all that bad and spending a disappointingly little amount of time punching Godzilla right in the face, he was Hal Wilkerson on Malcolm in the Middle. During his tenure on the show, Cranston earned the respect of virtually the entire writing crew due to his seemingly superhuman inability to give what us lesser humans know as fucks.
Another one for the not giving a fuck playlist.
I love writing these articles. These are my favourite articles to research and write, by the way. I fucking love the idea of just people who just do not give a shit. And I think Bryan Cranston, one of those people, just epitomises this concept, as you're about to find out in this video. The writers for Malcolm in the Middle first noticed that Bryan Cranston didn't give the slightest whiff of a shit when they wrote a scene calling for him to dance around in his underwear in front of the entire cast and crew with a t-shirt on his head. Initially, the writers assumed that Bryan Cranston would be a little hesitant to strip off to his underwear and dance like an asshole in front of people he'd only met a couple of weeks earlier. And they were pleasantly surprised when he didn't have any reservations about stripping down to his underwear and dancing around that kitchen like an asshole. I just want to celebrate another day of living. And they were even more shocked when he casually finished the scene and strolled off set and poured himself a cup of coffee, still stood in his underwear. Just picture that for a moment, because you've all just seen the clip of Bryan Cranston doing this. Now just think, the second they yelled the word cut, he said, all right, good work guys, I think that was a really strong take. I'm just going to be over here getting a drink. If you need me for another take, let me know. And just strolls off in his underwear, just pours himself a cup of coffee. Instead they're going, it's good shit this is good, it's good. Cranston's total lack of shame about walking around nearly completely naked impressed the writers so much that they began writing more episodes where Hal walked around in his underwear just because they thought the image of Bryan Cranston stood in a pair of tiny, tighty whities was so hilarious.
Now don't tell me this doesn't do something for you.
It is hilarious.
It's pretty fucking funny, isn't it? The one that gets me is that the writers thought it was so funny that they just went, we need to do this in more episodes. Like, Bryan Cranston just looks so hilarious, just stood in these sad, pathetic, shit and piss covered boxers, that we just need to do it more. Bryan Cranston in tighty whities, that is gold right there. Put it into more episodes.
What happened to your face?
What happened to your pants?
Also, I'd like to remind everyone that Bryan Cranston was nominated for 3 Emmys for his role as Hal Wilkerson on the show Malcolm in the Middle. Just keep that in mind as you watch these clips. So Brad, this all came to a head when all the writers met up and said, right, it's funny watching Bryan Cranston dance around in his underwear, but here's the thing. Is there anything he won't do? So they started like a little competition of sorts between themselves, just to try and figure out, is there something we can write into an episode of Malcolm in the Middle that Bryan Cranston won't do?
To what point will he say, no, I can't, I'm not going to do that?
So what point was that?
They haven't reached it yet.
They haven't reached it.
So the writers just doing this because they found it funny?
Because they found it funny and because they were trying to one-up each other, because it became a competition of sorts between the writers behind the scenes to try and write a situation for Bryan Cranston to be in that he'd be too embarrassed to do, which is why they started writing more and more elaborate scenes of him in his underwear, including my personal favourite, where they said, oh, Bryan, we've wrote a little song for you to sing here while you stood in your underwear in front of a mirror. It's about how fat you are and about how jiggly your nipples are. Bryan Cranston's like, yeah, sure, I'll do that, and stood in front of a camera and did it in one take while the entire crew were just off camera, pissing themselves laughing.
And when I start to wiggle, my nipples, they will jiggle.
So they started going, we need to find something Bryan Cranston won't do, which led to probably one of my favourite dick measuring contests in television history.
So what are some of the other things these writers did to him?
Well, one writer suggested to Cranston, hey, would you mind doing an episode where we reveal, like, Hal's having a midlife crisis and that he wants to paint a painting that's been in his mind for years? So yeah, that sounds like a good episode. We can do a lot of stuff with that. And for the episode though, we would need you to strip off completely naked and cover yourself in blue paint. Naturally, yeah. And Bryan Cranston's only reaction was, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And if you watch the episode back, I'm assuming you've just put a clip there where I just spoke, Cranston even offered to do additional takes of that scene so they could get it just right.
So you'd have to leave, clean it
So,
off,
yeah,
and then
then-
come back.
And then run and flying sex plant the easel. Don't forget that part. Mate, we're not even scratching the surface here. We've got a lot more bullshit. What you got to remember is that when I'm saying this, the writers were doing it to see if they could get Bryan Cranston to say, I'm sorry, but that's too much. I'm not willing to do that. So when he just come in and was like, yeah, that's fine. Imagine what their look on their face was like, oh, shit, I guess we better call the prop department and tell them we need to get like 80 litres of blue paint. Why? Because we're painting Bryan Cranston's dick blue. Another writer, in an attempt to win the competition of finding out what will Bryan Cranston not do, penned an episode where Hal becomes a race walker.
Like watching the gods return to Olympus.
You've probably seen the famous image of Bryan Cranston wearing this weird get-up. That's not the thing they thought Bryan Cranston wanted to do, because they knew he was comfortable walking around in his underwear. Why would he give a shit about wearing this skin-tight lycra outfit that lets you see like the curvature of his testicles? They wrote a scene where Hal was supposed to drink a smoothie made with raw eggs, raw meat, protein powder, and orange juice. And they assumed that Cranston wouldn't do it and they'd have to carefully cut around it. No, Bryan Cranston downed the entire thing like a drunk girl trying Jägermeister for the first time and did the entire scene in one take. So I just want you to keep in mind, when you watch, like, so I'm assuming Brad will just put a clip there of Bryan Cranston just downing that mixture. There's no camera trickery there, he's actually drinking raw meat. Oh my, Bryan, what are you doing? Bryan, you didn't have to do that. They offered to cut around, but Bryan's like, no, I'll do it. You want me, the script says I've got to drink raw beef, I'm going to drink some raw fucking beef, and just does it. What a hero, I love him.
So these all seem to be based on things that he'd be afraid to do or embarrassed to do.
Yeah, they tried that for a while. There's an episode where they put a tarantula on him.
But the tarantula is actually a very gentle and timid creature.
So the writers tried a different tack and penned an episode where it's revealed that Hal used to be a roller disco champion. And obviously the idea there was they suggest it to Bryan Cranston and he'd be like, well, I can't really roller skate. And he goes, oh, don't worry, we'll get a stand-in to do that for you. No, Cranston didn't say that. All he did when the writers told him, oh, in the next episode, we're going to film, you're a roller disco champion. Can you roller skate? And he says, well, no, but how long do we have to film? And the writers just stared back and went, about 2 weeks. And he went, okay then, and went away, and for 2 weeks just practiced endlessly roller skating. When the time actually came to film the episode, he did the entire dance routine himself except for a sow cow and a cartwheel, which they got a professional stand-in to do instead. And he presumed that like he could have done that as well if they'd given him more time than none at fucking all. He basically spent the entire 2 weeks on roller skates, just practicing endlessly, to the point where he was good enough to look like he used to be a roller disco champion.
That routine won me a gold medal, a macrame plant hanger, and your mother's heart, all in the same afternoon.
Imagine what how flaccid the writers were. I bet the person who wrote that episode couldn't get it up for a month after that. Because just Bryan Cranston just utterly destroyed him. Because, oh, I'll show that Bryan. He used to be a roller disco champion. Suck on that, Cranston. 2 weeks later, he just rolls into the studio on roller skates like that. And the guy's just there going, well, fuck me, I guess. There's nothing this man won't do. I like to think that when they suggested that, and all the writers are there, they're like muffling laughter over like a speakerphone or something like that while talking to him. So, yeah, Bryan, in the next episode, shut up. Hal used to be a roller disco champion. We looked at your resume, it says here you got no roller skating experience. That's a shame, innit? And he goes, how long do we have to film? 2 weeks, Bryan. They just click. And they look out the window, and as they look out the window, he just rolls past the roller skates. Like, what? How? How did he know?
So what's the most ridiculous example of this?
All the writers sat down and went, look, Bryan will do anything. There's nothing we can suggest that he won't do. Come on, guys, put your thinking hats on. What can we suggest to him to get him to say no? And one of the writers went, bees.
Not the bees!
And presumably everyone else went, yeah, of course, bees. So they called Bryan in and said, yeah. How would you, how comfortable would you be, or would you be willing to just be covered in bees? Thousands of bees for an episode of Malcolm in the Middle. And Cranston's only reaction was, absolutely, and walked out. And that's point as well, the writers at this point hadn't actually written anything because they didn't think Bryan Cranston would say yes. They said it as a joke, thinking he'd turn it down. And when he said yes, they all sat down and they literally wrote an entire episode for a single sight gag. And that sight gag was Bryan Cranston covered in bees. Can we just, for a moment, appreciate this fact, the fact we live in a world where this is true. The writers were so confident that Bryan Cranston was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not being covered in thousands of bees. They said it as a joke. And then when he said, yeah, sure, that's fine, I don't mind, they all sat down and had to write an entire episode just to get that gag in because they couldn't believe it was true.
And they couldn't turn around and say to him, oh, we only said it as a joke.
We said, no, he called their bluff. That's poker, innit? And they go, all in. And Brian's like, yep, I'm all in as well. And he's got 4 kings in his hand and a blue eyes white dragon. And just slams it down on the table like, well, fuck me, I guess. And like, fuck, we've got nothing. We've got absolutely, they're sat there and they've got like an Uno card. And a beer mat. What do we do? When do we film? In 2 weeks. Where do you get like 1,000 bees on short notice? And Brian's like, well, that's not my problem, guys. I'm over here with my shirt off. I'm just waiting for your bees.
And after the shout cut, he walks over to get a coffee covered in bees.
I don't know if he did that, but I fucking hope that he did. Oh my goodness. Bryan Cranston, keep on it, mate.
Did your mum get that t-shirt custom made?
I believe she did, because every year for Christmas I ask my mum for the same 2 things. Something with my name on it, and something stupid. And this year she's had to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and got me something stupid with my name on it. So thanks, Mum. Really appreciate it. Probably she watches these videos, but she got really annoyed. She's like, you tell a lot of stories about your dad, Karl. You don't tell any stories about me, do you? You don't tell no stories about your mum. So let's correct that, shall we, Mum? Are you familiar with the show Criminal Minds?
Familiar, I haven't watched it.
Right, basically there's a character on Criminal Minds called Derek Morgan, played by Shamar Moore. And he is an astonishingly handsome man. You'll put a picture of him behind me and like people will see, that's a handsome dude. My mum has got the biggest crush on Mr. Moore. So what I did for her office where she works, I bought her a giant poster of him, like a headshot of him like that. Just like smouldering at the camera with his shirt off, and bought it for my mum, and she hangs that up in her office. And I'm going to text my mum after we finish filming this and get her to send me a picture of it hanging up in her office, and you're going to put it behind me. So there you go, Mum. There's an embarrassing story about you. And apparently, she just got, like, when she's at work and she's stressed, she just looks over at Shamar and she's like, oh, there we go. Apparently all the girls at her office just come up and go, like, Jerry, who's this caramel Adonis just on your walk? She's like, oh, that's Shamar. He's in Criminal Minds. And they all start watching Criminal Minds as well because they want to see Derek. Like, Criminal Minds is always on, like, the Sky Plan or whatever. She's got the TiVo box or something like that. And she always watches it whenever he's on screen. She just, like, takes a sip of her and goes, just every fucking time.